Tonight, we have something different for you and something that I am excited about. So I want to invite Bill and Randy to go ahead and come up here. Some of you guys, as you're watching this, you are new to Trailhead. And what I mean by that is you may have connected with us online during this time of social distancing. And because of that, you don't know a whole lot about Trailhead. You don't know a whole lot about us. And these guys that are sitting up here, the three of us, are really right now the leaders at Trailhead. And so what we wanted to do was just have essentially a time of meeting the pastors tonight. And so we're just going to tell you a little bit of our stories. Even if you've been around Trailhead, you probably haven't heard some of this information before. It will be good for you to know where we are each coming from tonight. And so we're going to share our stories. We're going to tell a little bit of what brought us into ministry and also what brought us to Trailhead. So tell you what, let's just go around and introduce ourselves and tell us whatever you want us to know about you and your family, Bill.
I guess I get to go first. All right. My name is Bill. You know Brenda. She helps play once in a while up front with the worship team and sings. That's basically our family that's here at Trailhead. So we have 4 children and 8 grandchildren. So we've been married for 38 years. And I've known Brenda since she's 3 years old. So I used to chase her around the nursery when she was little. And I finally did catch up to her and married her. So I've known Brenda a long time and she knows me. So the unfortunate thing about that, just to share, anytime you try to get away with something, you don't. All I have to do is walk in the house and she says, "What did you do?" And the best I can do is say something. Anyway, so that's been a blessing in my life, Brenda. We've both been in the ministry since we were 15. So we've served in various churches in various capacities. I went to Bible college. I also went to seminary afterwards, or cemetery, whatever you want to call it. And so we've been involved with youth for many years. We've ministered in the inner city as well as rural areas and suburban areas as well too. So God's just given us a great time in the ministry. We've enjoyed every minute of it, and we've enjoyed doing it together.
Good deal. So tell us what, I know you have a role that's kind of slash. Tell us what you do here at Trailhead.
Yeah, Bill, what do you do?
Not much.
Somebody write this down for us.
Yeah.
Well, I'm part of the teaching team here on Sundays, as well as works with youth, Next Gen Ministries, Children's Ministries, Next Step Ministries, just a number of ministries here at church. And so many of you have gotten to know me too, as well as we work together. Been part of the leadership initiative as we've worked with training leaders as well. And so we've just had the opportunity as we've gotten here just be part in small ways and bigger ways. We're just grateful for the opportunity to serve you and be part of your lives and to share Christ and develop real relationships with you. So we've really enjoyed that too as well. We love your children. We love you. So we're grateful for this time.
Good deal. Randy?
My name is Randy McCoy, and I primarily do worship here. I'm the worship pastor. And I thought tonight was just an awesome job by Lissy and Andrew and the gang up here leading worship. It was very nice to see and be behind the scenes. So great job, guys. My wife's name is Jana, and we've been married, I forget, 25, 26 years, something like that. And like Bill, I chased her around as well, only we were about 29 when I chased her, so a little bit different. We have 4 kids and 3 grandkids so far, but we've still got plenty of opportunities for more grandkids. I was in the ministry. I've been in the ministry for almost 30 years, primarily as a worship pastor. I've also and most recently have been consulting a lot with churches and organizational development and different things like that, leadership development. And I have been in the Vineyard movement. I've been the worship pastor of a couple of Vineyard churches. And so that's been the majority of my worship leading life. And so the way that I met Trailhead is that I answered a want ad, and the rest is history. He had it on this website, Church Staffing, and we both just took a chance and decided to have coffee. And I loved John's heart. I loved the things he was doing. I loved the vision that he had. And believe me, folks, it is very rare to find a church that is outward focused, that isn't afraid of growth, that wants to do the hard things in a church and not just play church. And I knew that that's who John was. And so I wanted to hook up and do that. So I've also been doing some executive pastor type things, associate pastor type different things. But so there you go.
There you go. So I am John Richardson, if I hadn't had a chance to meet you, and I think they just brought me up here to lower the age level on stage. Yeah, I know. I shouldn't have said that. No.
But you did.
But it's, I threw it out. So, I'm the founding pastor of Trailhead and am honored, extremely honored to be working with these guys. These guys have a lot of experience in ministry and have helped me in a number of ways and have helped Trailhead in a number of ways. And so we are excited to be working together. But yeah, I've been in ministry for quite a while as well. I am not bringing the age down that much, I guarantee you. So I started in ministry when I was young as well, and my wife chased me around. I don't know, why it was tough for you guys, but no, the reality is I waited and I waited and I waited for JD to stop dating a guy that she was dating, and I was kind of twirling my thumb saying, okay, anytime now, right? And so eventually she stopped dating this guy, and I jumped in as quick as I could after that. We got married in 2004, so we've been married for 16 years now and have 3 kids, 3 girls. If you have been around me for a while, you've heard this old joke, so just laugh like you haven't heard it, right? But I've heard that it said that God knows exactly how much testosterone is needed in a home, and apparently I have got it. I'm it, right? So I've got all girls that surround me in the house, 15-year-old, about to be a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old. Incredibly excited
Have
that
mercy.
Have mercy is right. Incredibly excited that God brought us to northern Colorado 5 years ago to start Trailhead Church, and are just constantly amazed at what God is doing in this place, in this region, in this town. So the next thing that I wanted you guys to hear from us is really kind of backing up a little bit further, but I wanted you to hear what it was that initially got us into ministry. Because if you are a normal person, you probably look at guys like us and say, why in the world would you do that? And I guarantee I ask the same question on about a weekly basis. Why in the world am I doing this? But this is what God has called us to do. So, Randy, tell us a little bit of your story of how you ended up doing this throughout your life.
Well, being in ministry is, this is what I always tell people: if you can do anything else, you should do that, because you have to know what you're called. And I went through a tough time in my life, and I had this music thing, but it was really, I was leading worship for this leadership team from a church in Kansas City. And I don't know that I really knew I was called to ministry yet, but I led worship, and something just, I don't know, hit me, and it was like the most awesome set I've ever led, and it was just unbelievable. And I've never experienced anything like that since that time. And so it was a fairly dramatic evening. And then since then, God has just confirmed over and over that because there's a grace that you have for different things. And so, we talk a lot about how many times the worship set fits right along with the with the message, and we hardly ever talk about that kind of thing, but God just does that. And so there's certain grace things that happens that makes you realize, yes, this is what I'm called to do. And so it's taken many different paths for me, which is, like I said, going in, helping lots of churches in a lot of different areas, and really starting off, that's what I was doing here for the most part. But so it doesn't look like the traditional pastor who becomes a pastor and just does all that. I've helped many churches, led worship at a lot of different places, and so it's been a different path than most. So
good deal. So for me, I did experience just a really clear call from God to say, this is what you're going to do. And I think the reason he did it that way with me is because I would not have done it any other way if he didn't just kind of tell me, you have to do this. Because I literally remember, this is going to sound crazy, I know, and I haven't shared this publicly before, but I remember being 12 years old and God prompting me saying, I want you to be a pastor. And I laughed and I said, yeah, right. And said, if you're serious, God, you're going to have to tell me later in life, because who is going to believe a 12-year-old kid, right? And so I did. I just kind of put it off the back of my mind and went about my business. And when I was 17 years old, he told me again and told me very, very clearly, to the point where I remember it was actually a Wednesday night, kind of like this setting we're in right now, Wednesday evening, where our youth would gather and do stuff on Wednesday evenings. And God, it didn't speak out loud, but just clearly showed me again, yes, I want you to go into ministry. And I was driving at that point, so I remember I had to get out of there. I went out, I got and sat in our Toyota Camry that we had and sat behind the steering wheel, and I just wept my eyes out. And I said, God, if there is any way that you can do this with somebody else, please do this with somebody else, because I don't want to do this. And he just continually affirmed, you are the one I want to do this. And so after a hard wrestling match with God, I finally said, okay, I can't do anything else. And since then, have had a chance to plant a couple of other churches, plant a church in California, in San Francisco area, plant a church in Mississippi, and pastor another church in Mississippi before God called us here. And we are hoping and praying that this is it for us, that God will just leave us here and let us stay and enjoy the beauty of the Rocky Mountains and all of that. And we're praying that somebody will come shovel our driveway during the winters as well. But other than that, we honestly love it here and are so thankful for the opportunity to serve at Trailhead. Bill, what was your experience?
Well, I grew up in a Baptist church in southern Minnesota. My grandpa was chairman of the deacon there for years, and my mom played the piano. And as a young boy, I remember going to church, and when I was 7 years old, I accepted Christ. That was a big deal in my life. In fact, Fred Bro, who I still know to this day, who still goes to church there, and who now is the chairman of the deacons there, led me to the Lord in junior church. Well, I went to camp when I was in 4th grade. And a missionary was there. His name was Tom Latham. And he was just on deputation going to Brazil. In fact, I'm still in contact with him today, and also his oldest son. And I was at camp, and God got a hold of my heart. And I just remember the Friday night, the last service of the evening for the week. God spoke to me and said, Bill, I want you to serve me. I didn't even know what that meant. And I felt a call from God at that point in time. And I didn't do anything. I didn't go forward. I didn't do anything. I just thought, well, that's weird, and never experienced that before in my life. And really said no, because I was just fearful of what God was doing in my heart and life. I never experienced that. And well, my mom and dad got divorced the next year. And I remember being very angry. I remember crying and begging my Mom to let Dad come back home. And I actually sort of blame Mom and God for Dad leaving. And of course, back in those days, it was a stigma in a conservative church for a mother to be divorced, and they wouldn't let her play the piano anymore, and Mom stopped going to church. And she said, Bill, you don't have to go to church if you don't want. And of course, I said, no problem. Ain't going no more. And it wasn't until 9th grade, I broke my arm wrestling that year, and my youth pastor came over to my house and said, Bill, why don't you come to the special meetings we're having up at church? This is an evangelist. His name was Bud Hunter. And he was speaking on the end times about Jesus Christ coming back. And I had never heard anything like that before. What do you mean Jesus Christ is coming back? What do you mean 7 years and 3.5 good years and 3.5 bad? What is this pre-trib stuff? And I didn't even know those things were in the Bible. But I remember at the end of the service, God really spoke to me again. And I think I went forward because I knew what I was living in my life wasn't godly. And I needed to change my life. And I didn't know what that meant. But I remember going forward. And as I went forward, I gave my heart and life to God. And I didn't think the people of that church loved me. I didn't think they even cared about me or even thought about me. I just want to be honest. And I remember that I got up to pray and turned around. The whole church went forward with me because they had been praying for me. And it was then I knew God had called me to full-time ministry. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what it would mean in my life. And so, of course, I started dating Brenda shortly after that and got involved in the church and the youth group and had a lot of scholarship offers to go to Division I schools for both wrestling and football. And I basically said no and went to a 4-year small Bible college. and then went in the ministry, and, you know, that's sort of how it all began. And I knew God had something for me in my life, and I've never looked back. God's always been the most important thing in my life, and from that day forward, I knew God had a call in my life. And this is a verse that really spoke to me when I was a senior. It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. It says, "Though I am free, I make myself a slave to all, that I might win the more." And that's been my heart's focus, to win as many people to Jesus Christ as possible before I die. And so that's one of the things that attracted me here to Trailhead, because I knew we had a pastor who was serious about that. And I'm thinking this will be my last 10 years. I'm not planning to go anyplace else, but I wanted them to be very fruitful in winning people to Jesus Christ. And I shared that with John, too, when we met for the first time. And that's a story in itself. Maybe he'll tell you someday. But I knew then that that's what God had called me to be.
Good deal. So, just being totally honest with you guys, we talked through some of the questions that we would discuss tonight. So we didn't come in and just do an impromptu kind of deal. But I do have a question that I want to ask that we didn't discuss earlier. So as you look back, as you think about life and as you think about ministry, it's a two-part question. What has been the hardest thing for you, and what has been the most rewarding thing for you? So I think most people by now know that pastors only work 1 day a week. So, you can work that in however you want to. But what has been the hardest thing, and what has been the most rewarding thing for you in ministry? Whoever wants to jump in.
Thanks, Randy. Well, it's going to sound funny because they both are really the same answer just about. The hardest thing has been people.
No offense.
Yeah. I just want to share being in the ministry, and as Randy said, one of the things, in fact, my grandpa, when I told him I was called to full-time ministry, he was a deacon in the church, he begged me not to go into ministry because he said, it'll be the worst thing you do in your life. And I said, how could that be? And I love my grandpa. He was a spiritual man, and I didn't understand what he meant by that. And sometimes I think it is people hurt people. And people you love, when you open up your heart, when you're in the ministry, you can't minister to people unless you're authentic, open, and honest, and lay your life out before people. And a lot of times people will take that and hurt you. And those things leave deep scars. Hurt you, your wife, your children. So yeah, that's the bad. Now here's the good. It's the people. It's the people that you see and that you have the privilege to be part of their lives in some small way to encourage them to live for God and then to see it happen. That is what makes it worth it all. The pain isn't even comparison to that. So to me, those are the two. What's the hardest thing? And the people, again, are the best thing. And so that's the blessing of being in the ministry of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'll jump in next to give you a little more time here, Randy. Yeah.
I'm a little slow, so.
No, in a similar way, I have an answer that's kind of the both and deal also. And so, for me, and I've talked to some of you guys about this before, but for me, one of the hardest things has been dealing with me, and I mean that in all seriousness. I'm just like you guys. I have all of the same brokenness, all of that stuff. One of the things that I deal with, that I wrestle with, is depression. And for years, I have wrestled with depression. And so there are just regular times where I feel like I don't want to get up. I don't want to do this. There are regular times where I look up and I think, I'm not qualified to do that. I am not good enough to do this. I am a bigger mess than anybody that I'm talking to right now. And so those are the hardest days for me, those days where it really is just kind of dragging the bottom of the pool, walking through the valley. And God has given me ways to deal with that, and He's given me opportunities to really care for people who deal with that same kind of stuff. But I have plenty of days where my wife will tell you, she's sitting in here with us, but she would tell you if she was up here that, about once a week, John says, that's it. I quit. I'm done. I can't do this. This is beyond me. All of those kind of things. And so it makes it really hard when you're an introvert, so not naturally a people person, and when you struggle with depression, getting in front of people and being with people and loving people and helping them come up from hard things that they are dealing with can be really, really draining. So that's the hard end of ministry for me. And then kind of on the flip side, it's almost the same thing because what God has done with that. Paul mentioned at one point having what he called a thorn in the flesh, where he prayed multiple times, 3 times, that God would take this from him, and God just said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. And I think for me, it's that same kind of thing with that depression and with that introverted personality, where God has me in that place because when incredible things happen in ministry, as it seems to happen so frequently, I'm in a place where I understand fully that's not me. I didn't cause that to happen. It's not because I have this charismatic personality that's coming out. It's not because I'm a great public speaker. It's just because God is doing what only God can do. And to see those things and to recognize that, wow, this is just so much bigger than me or so much bigger than us. To me, that is the most rewarding thing, to see God doing what only God can do.
I think the rewarding thing's pretty easy. I'm a developer at heart, so I like to develop people, develop worship leaders, and train and recruit and help people get to where they feel like they're doing what God would want them to do. Specifically in worship leaders, I've trained up dozens of worship leaders over the years, and so I'm to a point, and I have been for a while, that I get just as much joy out of watching. Just like tonight, I was behind the scenes watching and coaching and different things. So That's easily the best part for me personally. I don't speak in front of people typically and stuff, so that's kind of my voice per se. I think the hardest thing for me was just a few years back of being laid off from a couple of places vocationally, both being ministry type jobs, and having to deal with the rejection of that, and having to, deal with questioning whether you're still supposed to be in the ministry, or what you're supposed to be doing, or anything like that. And especially at the age I was when those things happened, it's not easy to just go out and find another position. And so, trusting God through that was very hard. I'm a doer typically. I want to work. I don't want I want to work for what I get. And so I had at least one of the years, and maybe 1.5 of the years, I was here with John, and John was a great mentor in that, and a good ear for me. And he can tell you that I'm a long ways now from where I was. But it's, you're always questioning when things happen. The first thing you do seems like is you question if you're asking God. Some people don't ask God, but I want to know what God wants me to do. So I would say, 5-6 years ago, there was a 2-3 year span of going, wow, I didn't expect to go through this in my 50s. And so, that was pretty tough. So.
Good stuff. Well, I hope part of this tonight has just helped you to see that we're normal guys. We're guys that have our flaws, have our imperfections, but we are guys that are trying to follow God and what God is doing here in Wellington, and specifically at Trailhead. If you have further questions, if you are curious about other things, hey, where was that Bible college that you went to, Bill, or whatever questions you may have, put them in the comments. Let us know, and we'll check on that later. And I'll answer for all of these guys so that I can come up with all sorts of good stuff for their answers. No, we'll come back to your questions when we can this evening and try to answer those if you have any questions for us on there. But if you are new to the Trailhead family, we are so glad that you have connected to us in this way, and are thankful that you have tuned in. And like I said early on, you have been persistent in following us, because it has required persistence to follow us online over the last several weeks. But we would love to connect with you soon, not only through online venues, but in person. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, I'm going to start over the next several days telling you about opportunities where, if you want to connect, if you want to gather, we are looking at ways to do that soon. Not this weekend, but probably the next weekend. We are starting to look at ways that we can gather for those who are ready to do that. So thank you guys for being a part of this tonight. I want to just pray for you. As we finish this time together, I just want to thank God that He has brought us together as a church, and I want to pray that He would, even in this time of distancing, do incredible things in your life. So let's go to God now, and we'll be dismissed after that. Father, again, we are just incredibly amazed and humbled by You. We are so thankful that You don't do this apart from us. And I know every one of these guys that are sitting on this stage tonight would admit that we know You don't need us in this, God. You didn't ask us to be a part of ministry because You were lacking something, or because You didn't have the skill or the ability. You could do this so much better than we can. But we are incredibly humbled that You would ask us to join You in this. And Father, we just want to pray that over every single person that is watching tonight. God, we know that You didn't just ask 3 men to lead a church. You asked all of us to be the church. And You have asked all of us to join You in what You are doing, and to be a part of the things that you could do on your own, but you want us to share your joy in that. And so I pray that you would give us the boldness and the strength wherever you call us to step in with you, to step in and follow you. I pray that we truly would be disciples and followers, not just people who watch from a distance, not just people who admire. But God, I pray that we would be on mission with you throughout Wellington and throughout our homes and in our neighborhoods. I pray that your leadership would be what directs every decision that we make. Help us to be the church. Help us to love each other well, and help us to love each other in the way that you love us. We pray these things in your name, Jesus. Amen. Thanks again for being with us tonight. We hope to see you again soon.